Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Hescox coming back to you. We're starting to talk about genetics in this chapter. Genetics is basically how your traits are passed from your parents to you on something that we call genes. So, one of the traits I ask you about is something that you got from your parents. So, like my dad has real dark eyes and real dark hair, just like mine. My son, ironically, has real dark hair and real dark eyes. So, those are the kind of things that I want. Maybe blonde hair, maybe right handed and left handed could be from your parents. We're going to start with the history of genetics and the founder of genetics and kind of work our way through from there. Living things inherit their traits in inheritable patterns. So it's a very predictable course. Now, it's not 100%, but it's predictable. A trait is any characteristic of an organism. It can be the color of your skin, the size of your nose. There's lots of traits. Between traits, they are acquired or inherited. An inherited trait, like my hair color, comes in my genes. If it's an acquired trait, like say your mom dyes her hair, that's an acquired trait. Hair and eye color are inherited, but some things can be learned, such as riding a bike, the ability to read, but heredity is also influenced by the environment. So you have a skin tone. Your skin tone can be influenced by your environment. Let's say it's the summertime. Guess what? In the summertime, you get in the sun. Guess what happens to our skin? It becomes more tan. So your traits can actually change a little bit. Is it inherited or is it acquired? So we have eye color. That one is inherited. The next one are people learning to walk. Acquired. A baby crying. Inherited. Having red hair. Most of the time it's inherited. Now, some people do acquire it by a bottle. Learning to read. Acquired. Learning to do math. Also acquired. Inheritance happens because of sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction happens when you have a combining of genetic material from mama and papa. We humans have 46 chromosomes. You get 23 from mama, 23 from papa. Traits are passed on genes. Now, genes are very much like a recipe. They are passed in a cookbook, just like my grandmother passed her cookbooks on to my mother. Well, the cookbook is like a chromosome. It's a bunch of recipes. Each recipe has the directions to do something. So a gene is usually a particular location on your chromosome, and that location tells the cell how to make a protein. Now, that protein might tell the cell how to do a reaction. It might be for a protein. It might be a protein for structure. It could be organelle structures. All kinds of proteins. You have 2 copies of every gene. Now, they're not always the same because you get 1 copy of that gene from mama and 1 copy from dad. Sometimes you have genes that are more influential. We call those dominant genes. Parents give each offspring 1/2. So we have 46 chromosomes. How many is half? Well, each parent gives 23 chromosomes to the offspring, at least human offspring. We call 1/2 of this an homologue. And your homologue will have something called an allele. An allele is really nothing more than the different versions of the same gene. So you can have an allele for blonde hair, brown hair, black hair, or red hair. In blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes, those are alleles. When you see what we call a karyotype later on in the chapter, there's 23 pairs of chromosomes. The last pair, the 23rd pair, is the only pair that can be unmatched. In women, it is XX. If you have 2 X's, you are a girl. If you have an X and a Y chromosome for your 23rd pair, you are a male. The Y chromosome does not match up with the X chromosome. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a biology rock star if there ever was one. This is Gregory Mendel. Gregory Mendel was an Austrian monk. Now, Austria is a part of Germany. or just south of Germany, like the Czech Republic area now. Gregory Mendel did lots and lots and lots of experiments on pea plants. Yes, those little green things that people don't like to eat at lunch. Why did he use peas? Because you can get lots of generations very quickly. They have lots of different types of traits, and you have many traits where it's just one particular gene that influences it. He bred things like smooth peas and rough peas, green peas and yellow peas, red pea plant flowers, white pea plant flowers, and pink pea plant flowers. He grew based on the pods. He did experiments. He did tall pea plants and short pea plants. Many, many more things than I ever considered interesting in peas until I learned about Gregory Mendel. This is Mendel's famous cross. The P generation stands for parent generation. Basically, he took what we call pure he took tall pea plants that we call pure. Now, why were they pure? Because when you bred tall with tall with tall with tall, you always got tall offspring. And he crossed them with pure short pea plants. And what he found, all of the offspring were tall. So he crossed these tall ones. And then he found a ratio where some of them were tall, 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 but the short reappeared. And Mendel later decided that that short, which appears in this F2 generation, so technically this means first filial, this is the second filial, and he decided that there has to be some sort of inheritance factor. He did not use the word gene. Mendel came up with that there must be a tall inheritance factor and a short inheritance factor. And he said that that short inheritance factor must hide. Well, the word recessive, which comes about later, means hidden. It's a little bit cloudy on here, but if you'll notice here at the bottom, this tall pea plant is capital T, capital T. A short pea plant is little t, little t. After this F1 generation, they are all capital T, capital T, little t. So not only are these ones called pure, we also call these homozygous. These ones, which are mixed, we call hybrid, or we call them heterozygous. Now here, capital T, this one's homozygous or pure. We have two heterozygous, and then our recessive over here. Phenotypes and genotypes. Good way of thinking about it, a phenotype is what you see. Brown hair, blue eyes. The genotypes are the genes within that you don't see the genes, you only see what's expressed from those genes. So if you break it down, the phenotype is what I see, the genotypes are the types of genes that are actually present. There are two types of alleles. Mendel came up with dominant alleles that are always expressed and recessive alleles that kind of hide when there's a dominant one around. Dominant alleles can overpower the recessive alleles. Recessive alleles are only expressed when they are homozygous. So, if it's little b for blue eyes, where brown hair can be capital B, little b, or capital B, capital B. Both of those will give you the same brown outcome. We'll watch these videos, and then we're going to wrap it up by determining, is this a dominant trait or a recessive trait? Brown hair, is that a dominant trait or a recessive trait? Yep, you got it. It is dominant. Red hair. We didn't talk much about red hair, although I have some red-haired nephews. Red hair is recessive. It's even recessive to blonde hair. Blonde hair is recessive to most. Being right-handed is much more common. Right-handedness is dominant. Having tall pea plants, also dominant. Getting short pea plants is recessive. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to the end of section 1 on chapter 4. We're all talking about the history of genetics and Gregory Mendel. Make sure you get your reading done, and when I put out the Google form, make sure you have that done too. And until next time, be good, be safe. I'm Mr. Hescock, signing out.